Okay, as in go? Sorry, 1 second.
Forktales, a podcast that feeds the food and beverage world.
Oh, awesome. Forktales is brought to you by Vigor, a branding and marketing agency for passion-driven, innovative restaurant, beverage, and hospitality brands. Learn more at vigorbranding.com. If you love what we're serving up, please give Forktales a 5-star review on your podcast service of choice. Think of it as a tip for good service. Hey everyone, today I am joined by Scott Conant, who shouldn't really require an introduction, but I'm going to kick it over to you, Scott, to give a hi, hello, and a little bit of backstory on what it is that you do in this world.
Oh my goodness, what do I do in this world? Well, I'm Scott Conant. I am a chef. I always kind of lead with I'm a cook because I feel like that was my first love and entree into restaurants and all things food. So that's what I go with. I'm a cook.
Nice. And I think throughout your career, you've been all different kinds of cook chefness, from learning pastries in Germany to opening, I would say, renowned restaurants. The star reviews seem to have followed you every time you opened one. And then how a lot of folks may know you is from the Food Network. Obviously Chopped, but you're on other programs as well.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. And so today, I think we really want to focus on, at least the underlying, is there's a new book coming out. I'm really excited about it. I'm sure you are too. But then we also want to talk about your journey a little bit and how did you get to book, right? At least this one.
Yeah. Thank you. The book I'm excited about, it's called Peace, Love, and Pasta. And it's basically people, the one thing that people always ask me, and I think people just ask every chef that they meet, what do you cook at home? What's your favorite thing to cook? So I figured it's a great starting place, particularly during a pandemic, to put it all on paper and cook it and test it and, take photos of it. So it's been a great journey, just getting this book in print. And I got the first copy last week, and I'm just over the moon with how it looks. And the thing that I love most about it is it's really simple. I mean, the execution of these recipes is simple. They're easy to execute, and what you end up with is really something that I think you expect from a chef, right? Which is really good flavors and something that's familiar but interesting simultaneously. And as I said, just you can make these recipes your own the more you cook them, and that's working. It's good.
Yeah, it's interesting because during the pandemic, I know we know a lot of people started. I guess the joke was banana bread, right? Everyone all of a sudden started making banana bread.
Yeah.
And I love to cook, not in a professional sense by any means, but for myself, for my friends and family, and I got really good at it, and it made it harder to go out and eat. Now if something comes back mediocre, I'm a little bit mad. I'm like, I just paid money for something I could have made better. Especially when you get into like making fresh pastas and stuff like that, it starts to get really difficult to stomach a subpar experience. How about you being a chef? What's that like? Going out to eat for maybe a non-event driven eating experience.
I think the key is to shut it off, and just try to enjoy yourself. The more you sit there and you try to pick apart things or what you would have done or how it could be better or whatever the case may be, you just make yourself miserable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the key is let's not be miserable. Let's try to enjoy the experience in front of us. And more importantly, even if you're not crazy about the food, there's so many other aspects of it all that I'm easily entertained. I love sitting in a restaurant. It's just, it's something I've always enjoyed, taking part in the conversation with company, the people that I'm with is also really important as well. So, And if worse comes to worse, tap out early.
Or go for dessert, right?
Someplace else, yes. Everybody
That's
wants
right.
soft serve. You know?
So what's funny though is I think programming that's out there, especially across Food Network, a lot of it. I mean, it's. I think that has changed the paradigm for a lot of us here, stateside at least. Um, and I almost wonder if people have developed an expectation that they should be critical, a la a Chopped or something like that. Where, so anecdotally speaking, I remember we were doing work for a QSR in Honolulu, and they're fresh grilling food and vegetables, putting on a plate, really, and it was really good, had good flavor and everything. But one of the bad Yelp reviews was it lacked presentation, and I at my desk laughed out loud, and I'm like, it was presented in a box. Like what? What else did you want? So have you encountered that as well? Do you feel like the critiquing that's out there has affected a generation of people in a bad way?
It really has, and it's kind of crazy, right? People use these buzzwords; they don't even know what they mean. And it really it's painful to watch because I feel like I've been a part of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
It's kind of my fault, some of it. So it's ridiculous when people start getting overly critical of things, and when people come into one of the restaurants and they lead with like, "I'm an elite Yelper." Like, I just try to enjoy yourself. You know what I mean? Like this is
Yeah.
about enjoyment. This isn't about you looking down your nose at me and everybody else inside this restaurant. Like, it just particularly now with everything going on inside the restaurant industry. Um, it started off as people were kind of understanding, but people aren't particularly understanding, and we are really having a hard time, not just identifying staff, keeping staff, but staff that's in and out with COVID, where
Right.
Suddenly we have 8 employees. 8 employees is extremely significant for any restaurant, no matter the size. That if they're
Right.
if they're not going to be around for 2 weeks, you run into real significant issues. And then, supply chains are broken and everything that goes on top of it. I reopened one of my restaurants here in Phoenix a few months ago, and it had closed just prior to COVID, and it opened up like a lot of people. But what we had realized was that we had a 46% increase in cost of food.
Ooh.
46% at my cost. Restaurants don't make a lot of money, by the way. I would be sitting in a very different place right now talking to you in one of my many homes if restaurants really made a lot of money. You can make a lot of money in restaurants, but I chose for better or worse, probably worse, to be on the high end of things years ago. So
Right.
Traditionally, they don't make a lot of money, and it's just, let's just say it's hard. I'm not a victim. None of us are victims. Don't get me wrong, but it's
Sure.
difficult, and we want to be there for our team, right? We want to be there for the staff. We want to make sure that they're making a living, but no one opens a business to lose money. I don't know anyone who opens a business to lose money. No one I'm
Yeah.
going to do business with. So
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But holding on by a thread is, I mean, all the pivots and how agile you had to be and still have to be right now. Like you said, supply chain issues are not fixed by any means. Labor issues are not fixed by any means. I'll be interested to see what happens now that the unemployment that faucet has been turned off. Because that issue, like with most issues, have been boiled down to headlines and talking points as opposed to like the real meat and potatoes of what is causing it. Um, I mean, I think some people can kind of get stars in their eyes and see you at this high level and think that you don't get to that granular level, but you do. I mean, with Scarpetta and a few of you have 2 brands or 3 brands.
Yeah, I'm not involved in Scarpetta anymore for about 7 years.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. So yeah, I have the Americano, I have Chalayo in the Catskills, and I have the Americanos in Scottsdale, and then I have more Italian in Phoenix, and I'm working on a couple other things as well.
More was what I was thinking. Yeah. So, but you are still in the in the weeds, so to speak, with them. So, what were some of the challenges that you faced over this last year, and how did you even start to overcome them? Juggling, I mean, you wrote a book, and you have still the Scott Conant personality that is a brand. How do you even begin to pivot and you know
I,
get through it?
you don't have a choice. You make these decisions. You have responsibilities. You have responsibilities to your team, to the business itself, to your family. We all need to generate income. None of us, I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm not independently wealthy. I need to work for it. So I just think that you don't have a choice in the matter. You got to put your head down and you need to focus and get the best out of the people that you have around you. I mean, that is
Yeah.
ultimately a constant conversation, and staying in constant communication with one another is vital. Honestly, there's no right or wrong answers here, right? Everything is fluid. Everything is changing constantly. We see it on a daily basis. So, yeah, what are you going to do? You
Right.
move with it. You talk to the people around you, and you make sure that you're making the best decisions for the business, for your team, and for the customers and clients that are coming in.
Yeah, and you mentioned, I mean, you've always been a full service guy, right? So always been full service restaurants. Um, they were shaken obviously really hard during the pandemic, as opposed to a QSR. Um, what do you see as the future for full service? I mean, do you see a place for casual dining to thrive? Do you think there's going to be a great divide between fast casual speed versus high touch full service? What are your thoughts on that?
I think there's always going to be a place for fine dining. Maybe not at the same, at the same broad spectrum that there was, or I think inevitably things contract and things open back up again, so to speak. So
Yeah.
I think there'll always be a place for it. I think that it's probably the people who are really good at it are going to stay there, and everybody else is going to have to kind of adjust accordingly. I also think there is a huge market for fast casual and QSR. I think that's expanding and growing on a daily basis from what we see. As I look at my colleagues around the country, there's a lot of high end chefs that are starting to do um, quick service or fast food even,
Hmm.
and I think it's great. I think that the you just look at the spectrum of it all, and I think that there's not really been a chef who's been able to roll out a fast food ideation or concept short of Wolfgang Puck. And Wolfgang does a lot of stuff in airports and those licensing deals. They're not
Yeah.
necessarily a single branded fast food restaurant. People always say Danny Meyer, but Danny's not a chef. You know, great restaurateur, one of the
Right.
best ever, but he's not a chef. So Bobby did some stuff with Bobby's Burger Palace, and we'll see where that lands. On the other side of things, I'm always rooting for Bobby. He's a good friend. There's more, and there's other things, but you look at a guy like Sam Fox out here in Phoenix and Scottsdale, and what he's created and what he's done. First, he took True Foods and rolled that out with P.F. Chang's, took a lot
Hmm.
of money off the table. God bless him with that. And then he did the same thing with Flower Child, and he had some other things inside there that he sold. But then he took Flower Child in North Italia and sold those to Cheesecake Factory, and then eventually his entire company to Cheesecake Factory. I mean, that is the type of thing I feel like we're going to start to see more and more of, where it's already been there to a certain extent, but really good, fast casual, high quality food with different service points. You go into a place like Flower Child, you order at the counter, you sit down, they deliver your food. You're really cutting your labor model significantly with that style of service, and I find that wildly impressive that Sam has been able to do it the way he does and has been.
Yeah, and still output such a fantastic product too. I mean, Flower Child is
Great,
truly delicious.
agreed.
You mentioned North Italia. I know that's not a brand you're affiliated with, but Italian food to me has always been an interesting nut to crack. There have been some folks who have tried to fast casual or quick serve Italian food, and they always seem to honestly fall on their face. And it's a food that I don't think is very complex. You have, I would say, a group of foodies or chefs that kind of turn their nose at Italian, maybe because it's so prevalent or because it's relatively popular, easy to make. What are your thoughts on that? Why do you think it's so hard to quick serve Italian food well and do it very well high end?
Well, my experience with quick serve, not that I've done it personally, but things that I've adjacently or observed, or friends of mine who've done it, whatever the case is. Um, it's a challenge because it needs to be done on the move. You have to do it at the moment of order for the most part, and that becomes very challenging. Pasta doesn't wait, as we all know. And then there's the pizza place. There's been a lot of Italian style pizza places that do very well. I'm a big fan of Bonci, which is I think there's one in Miami, one in Chicago, currently based out of Rome. I really like what they do with pizzas and the Roman style pizza taglio. I think it's good stuff. But when it comes to things like pasta and whatnot, it's just, I think it's tough for people to get their head around something that is Italian or pasta driven as a fast casual component, right? I
Yeah.
think that people think of pasta as a quick dinner. As someone who does and is kind of known for pasta, I can tell you that there's always pushback on what it is. There's got to be some kind of almost luxury ingredient inside the pasta, or it needs to be elevated. One of my signature dishes is the spaghetti with spaghetti al pomodoro, pasta al pomodoro, with tomato sauce and basil. And
Hmm.
I feel like I would never try to make that base an entire restaurant concept around that in a fast casual setting, um, because it's special in a fine dining environment because people appreciate the simplicity of it, right? And
Hmm.
the in the way we can almost, you know, it's almost revered, right? The way
Hmm.
it's presented and all that kind of stuff. In a fast food setting, that's going to be a real difficult sell. I feel like. Um, I don't have the answers. People keep trying. People have approached me many times about doing some Italian stuff, something Italian fast food, and I'm always open to the conversations. But ultimately, to your point, like what makes it special? Why is
Right.
it special? You know,
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be hard to operationalize the speed, like you said. Pasta doesn't keep, um, and there's something, I hate to use the word comfort or the phrase comfort food, but pastas really are just one of those long-standing comfort foods. And can you really deliver comfort food? I think in that fast format and still maintain that reverie, like you say, that moment, that specialness about it. Um, so I want to get into the book, which definitely centers on pasta. But first, I think there's always an aura around folks who have hit a certain level in their career. They're at that quote unquote celebrity level, which I know is probably goes against your own humble personality. But I think there's some folks who would love to know at what point did you say, I'm doing well with restaurants. I feel like this is great, but I want to get a face out there. I want Scott Conant to be a name. What was that moment, and how did you go from chef to that level?
I never had that moment. I
Okay.
just, I feel like, I've done restaurants. I've been in restaurants for 35 years now. But since I started cooking as a 15-year-old kid in Waterbury, Connecticut. And I think that there's inevitable, um, there's inevitable expansion. There's want, desire, all that kind of stuff. As I started doing more restaurants and I was involved in opening more restaurants and identifying deals and all that kind of stuff, what's the next step in getting those restaurants that were decidedly high-end restaurants with check averages of $100 or more per person? What's the next step? The next step would naturally being, how do you create an advertising platform for yourself that's going to sell those restaurants? So it wasn't necessarily just about me. It was about getting the restaurants out there. So as I was approached just to do some stuff on the Food Network, it made perfect sense to me. I had turned down some other opportunities on different networks with different shows, and I really kind of kicked myself that those things didn't work out or I had turned it down,
Hmm.
especially identifying the success of what those shows had become. And I figured it just made sense to expand an advertising platform. And what better way to do that than on television, right? I mean, it was really a business thing. It wasn't about my ego. It wasn't about me becoming popular or a quote unquote celebrity chef. I kind of resent that because
Hmm.
it almost
Hmm.
sounds like I don't work hard anymore. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where, there's this sense of celebrity and you just ride that wave, or you're a sellout, or whatever the case may be. As I said, I still work for a living, right? I'm still trying, and inevitably there are people who look at me and say, I want to be where he is. But inevitably I look at other people and say, I want to be where they are. Like, I don't think of
Right.
myself as that guy. You know what I mean? And anybody who knows me knows that, I'm uncomfortable with that, with all that talk. I don't think of myself as one of, kind of quote unquote, one of those people. And
Yeah.
all my friends don't think of themselves either as those people. I mean, no one would want to hang out with them.
That's right. I was just listening to Joe Rogan. I'm blanking on her name, who was just on talking about Anthony Bourdain
Yeah.
and his ongoing, what some people call imposter syndrome, which I don't think it's imposter syndrome, honestly, because like you said, it's easy to be outside looking in, to never have met Scott or, Anthony or one of the many other celebrity chefs out there or whatever, and just say, no, there's someone who has it made. Like you said, strolls up, does some high fives, kisses the babies, and just goes to the bank laughing. And it's not real. And so it's good to hear like the breakdown that that's not a reality. Like there's still a ton of work. I mean, like you said, running restaurants, not one, many, dealing with pandemic, watching, the costs go up and the revenue go down, trying to put on a happy face when you have to in front of the camera. Hope, you know what I mean? There's talk about hustle. And I think people see, oh no, you just go around being famous. That's what it is.
I think that's the thing. I think that people don't realize the amount of work that it actually takes. I remember the first time I met Rachel Ray, right?
Okay.
This is a great moment for me. She said, "Did you guys see this thing last night on TV? This thing happened." And I said, "Rachel, we still work for a living. Like, we're still in restaurants." She looked at me like venomous. And she was like, "Let me tell you something. All right. I work 18 hours a day." And she went through her schedule. And I felt like a douche because I wasn't
Yeah.
saying you don't work for a living. I was saying we're still in our restaurants every night. We don't have, we don't watch TV like that. That was
Yeah.
the point. Like, we're up in the morning, we leave, we come home. It's 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, probably, that's what it was. But what I realized inside that moment was the sensitivity that she had. And I, frankly, now I have, where people
Hmm.
question the relevance, whether or not we are relevant as cooks or as whatever,
Hmm.
because we have some level of notoriety. And the fact of the matter is that it takes a lot to get here, and it takes more, not just to stay here. Like, I'm not that guy, but
Hmm.
just to maintain and to be where you want to be. We all have hopes and dreams and ambitions, right? I just happen to be living mine, right? When I was a
Right.
young cook, these are the dreams and the hopes and the ambitions that I had. And I'm fortunate that I've been able to kind of realize some of them, but I still have a long way to go. I still got a lot of things that I want to do.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I identify with it a lot. I mean, obviously, I'm not a celebrity, but for a while there, before the pandemic, when you were able to go to talks and listen to folks of varying degrees of success speak on, the future, on getting to where they are, there was this underlying message of f the hustle, of it's not worth it. And there's a part of me that kind of laughed. I'm like, are you just trying to kill competition? Because you hustled to get to where you are. I've been hustling to get to the level that I'm at, which admittedly isn't that high, but still better than starting out, right? And yet you're up here telling everyone to not work hard. Do you just not want people to compete? Is that the idea?
I've never heard of such nonsense in my life. You're
Yeah.
not going to get anywhere if you're not hustling, right? If you this is one of the things that makes me crazy today. How people look at chefs and say, "Look at that glamour! Look at that glamorous life that they live." There's no glamour in this game. Like me talking to you is fun, and we can talk about the past, and we can talk about the future, and we can say, yeah, we've identified successes and things of that nature. But I
Yeah.
worked my ass off to get. I was working 100 hours a week when my friends were out drinking. You know what I mean? Like I still work 80 hours a week, and it's time away from my family, and it's time. And people are like, "Oh, woe is you, Scott," right? Like, "Oh, you got it really rough." I'm just saying, I work. You ask me how it gets done. This is how I did it. I don't know
Right.
another way. Of course, I resent myself on occasion for working too hard or being a jackass and not going out after work instead of taking business classes online like I probably should have. You know what I mean? Like there's a million things you could look backwards and say, I shouldn't have done that. I should have done
Right.
this. I could be better than what I am. I don't know anybody who doesn't think that way. I don't know
Right.
anyone who doesn't think that way. And anyone successful is meant to think that way. You're meant to be better. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Just be better. Realize your potential. That's all I've always said in my career. All I want to do is realize my potential. That's it. It's not too much to
Yep.
ask, right?
No, I mean, and that ethic runs deep when you
Yeah.
love what you do. You know.
Yeah. Well, no one should do anything that they don't love to do, right?
Right.
I'm a big fan of Joseph Campbell. If you're familiar with Joseph Campbell,
Hmm.
and he had this saying called "Follow your bliss," and I always say you need to pursue happiness at all costs, at all expenses, and it's not selfish to pursue your bliss. It is not selfish. I mean, that's one of the things that is going to help you identify success because all that hustle and those 80-hour work weeks and 90-hour work weeks at 100 hours a week that you're working doesn't feel like work. And I know it's so cliche, and it's kind of like pursue what you love, and you'll never work a day in your life. It sounds like such bullshit. But the fact of the matter is that I believe that. I
Yeah.
believe that if you just do what you love, it never feels like work. It never feels like you're sacrificing something.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was just asked this morning, actually. Well, I was asked last week about this morning to intro myself to a larger group of folks and then also answer the question what I'm passionate about. And I thought all weekend about it. And I'm like, this is going to sound like a load of garbage, but I'm really passionate about restaurant strategy from brand to marketing to interiors. Like, not working in the kitchen. I'll be honest. There's a reason why I'm
Okay.
not in a restaurant. But that's literally my passion. If you catch me outside of quote unquote work, what am I going to talk about? That. What am I going to wax on about that? And therefore, working 80 hours a week doesn't feel like it because I like doing it. You
It's
know?
just part of your life, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in that. I really am. I think that if anybody is counting their hours, you shouldn't be doing it.
Right.
I don't work in restaurants like I used to work in restaurants. First of all, I don't have the bandwidth like I used to. I can't turn it all off and just focus the way one needs to focus inside a restaurant in order to be there on a full time basis. Um, I have a lot of focuses, and I have a lot of people that I work with in order to kind of compartmentalize things and keep me, kind of focused on the things that I need to be focused on.
Hmm.
But yeah, man, I agree with you. I think that these are hard choices sometimes for all of us to
Yeah.
have to make. And identifying what it's one thing about being passionate about something, but that doesn't always equate to being good at it. And that's
Right.
another one of those challenges that we all find where you see I don't know how many 60 something year olds I've spoken to in my career where they say, I want to be a chef. I want to go back to culinary school and I want to work in restaurants. And you talk to them, you spend some time with them, you realize how passionate and how much they love food, but it doesn't necessarily equate to a job on the line, right? I mean, that's
Right.
a tough transition particularly at a certain age. I always say it's a young
Yeah.
person's game. Um, but there are a lot of things within the food world that make a lot of sense for other people, right? There are a lot of jobs inside food genre that that you can do, right? And it doesn't, and a lot of it, most of it, 99.9% of it is not glamorous, you know?
Right. Yeah, I think it's great. So we all right, we got heated. Let's find some peace, love, and pasta. So all right, now we explained a little bit about what's in the book, the cookbook that's coming out. Let's start though
I got a copy
with
of
the
it.
name.
I got to hold it up so everybody sees
I love it.
love and pasta. Yeah, it's good.
Oh, that's great. For those that are listening, it's great, big, huge words, peace, love, and pasta with a beautiful foil fork behind it. It's
Yes,
gorgeous.
it's
Um,
good stuff.
so that name, tell me about the name. How did that come to you? All of it.
All of it. So, for years, just for personal stuff, I've always been somewhat, at least over the past 20 years or so, on a little bit of a spiritual path. I've always tried to, be better and identify some level of inner wisdom stuff. It's all personal. I really don't talk
Mm-hmm.
about it in a public forum, but I feel like since I've had kids in particular, obviously I've been spending more time at home. And my first three cookbooks, I, you know, I think it came out in 2013, my last book. My kids were little.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, I don't know if you have children, but it's really if you really allow, when you have children, if you just allow them to really truly come in, I feel like it is the biggest life change that we can have. And I had a shaman years ago tell me, if you want to figure yourself out, you want to make your life good for for children, Scott, you want to make their lives better, fix your own shit. And I felt like that was really, she was speaking to me,
Yeah.
And so for years I've been working on myself and trying to be better. And I feel like that name, Peace, Love, and Pasta, kind of represents where I am. I feel like, peace and love is something I choose to pursue. I have opinions, as you can tell, but I am, I'm always open, and I'm always in a non-judgmental headspace, with the exception of when I do judging on television with food.
Right.
But and I feel like with pasta, it's just something that's been such an important part of my life and my career. And there's a really good, healthy section of pasta inside this book also. And it's things that I cook for my family, that I cook for my friends. There's a section of things that I cook for the girls, my daughters. My wife is Turkish, so there's a lot of Turkish stuff in there as well. If you've never sat down and had a proper Turkish breakfast, it is a special moment. So there's a little bit of that inside there, and some of the breads and eggs and all that kind of stuff, that in pide and all those things that Turks do. So yeah, I feel like it's an expression of my years of cooking. Some of the things are from my first job when I worked, as I said, when I worked in Waterbury, Connecticut, and I've kind of tweaked these recipes over the years. So big stuffed lobster and zucchini blossoms that my mother would cook when I was a kid, and some versions of those things, some of them filled with ricotta. Just all kinds of like fun and whimsical recipes that are little small twists that I've personalized, made my own. And I think you end up with something really simple and elegant simultaneously for dinner.
Yeah, I think it's such an appealing title. Not trying to pump you up, but for a few reasons. One, I think it's really timely with the current state of the world. I think we could all use 30 to 60 minutes of peace and love amongst friends. But also, I see cookbooks, and I obviously have a few, and it's really interesting. But I love those first two words because it really nails on the head why I love to cook at home. I love to cook for friends. So, for instance, I just had a birthday, and my wife asked me what I wanted to do. I was like, I would love to have people over, and I would love to cook for them.
Great.
And she's like, on your birthday? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, because it's peaceful. And then when you see people enjoying it and you're with them enjoying it, that's love.
Yeah.
And pasta's a good one to end with because it's amazing. Pasta's great.
But I agree with you that Bobby Flay said to me one time, it was just, we were shooting together and he asked me, what are you doing for Thanksgiving? It was like a week before Thanksgiving or 2 weeks or so. And I said, I have like 40 people coming to my house and I have this 46-pound turkey and we're, I'm just cooking everything and I'm really excited. I'm doing like 8 courses.
Mhm.
And he said, isn't it amazing that what we do for a living is also what brings us joy and peace at home and we do it on our time off. And I really had never put that together before. I'd never
Yeah.
really thought about it. And he's 100% right. I mean, it is what brings us joy to be able to bring joy to other people. And
Yeah.
it's great.
So you'll like this. And then I have one more question before we shore this baby up. I made a New Year's Eve dinner this past year, invited some friends over. We had an issue at the house that prevented me from cooking in my own kitchen. So we went to a friend's house. One, they had an electric stove. Don't get me started. I wasn't ready for that. Okay. But whatever, we deal with it. I'd prepped everything. You know what I mean? I brought everything prepped. So it really was just at that point cooking.
Heat and serve. Yeah.
And yeah. So, I just grill it up and heat it up. And I won't go into what I made, but it did involve handmade pasta because I think that's a wonderful process. And my friend, who's Italian from New Jersey, he's a really good friend. He shows up with stromboli that he bought. And I just give him this look like, are you going to smack my mother in the face next? What are you doing? Like, I made dinner. I was making dinner. And he's like, oh, I can't show up without food. I'm like, no, you actually can show up without food. Like, I promise you. It was a moment. I had a hard time getting over, and I obviously still harbor a little bit of anger towards it.
Clearly. Yeah.
I still bust his chops about it, but
Listen. I think that as an Italian, it's perfectly normal to show up with food, right?
Yeah.
I do think that it's probably better to show up with wine or some kind of an accompaniment. Like if you want to be a big shot, bring truffles. You know what I mean? You want to,
Right.
You know what I mean? Like be. But I also think that you can't take away from the person who's doing the real heavy lifting and work there, right? Or
Right.
at least make it something that won't be consumed with dinner. Make something that's consumed, in your own life, in your own personal time, not today. Does that make sense?
Right. It does. Yeah. Actually, I think I'll have to make that a rule for people who want to contribute.
Yeah.
Bring a liquid, bring a dessert, but don't mess with the full food that I'm making here. All right. So we're going to have all the links on where to buy this cookbook. I have two more questions. One, I cannot wait for this to come out because I am going to try some of the recipes, of course. But all right, number one, if you had to pick one recipe to try in the book, what would it be and why?
That's a tough question because
I know it's like asking which is your favorite kid, right?
There are degrees. There are degrees of difficulty in some of these things. The other day I was doing a cooking demo for someone. I did these chicken cutlets with stewed baby tomatoes and just put some burrata on top of it, which is kind of like a play on a chicken parm, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, a big winner. A lot of people were super happy and excited about that, which I appreciate, obviously. But if I were to sit down and make this, there's a risotto inside this book, which I love. And what you do is you take onions and you caramelize them. You take like 10 pounds of onions and you caramelize them over a day and a half, 18-hour period. 18, 20 hours, whatever it is, just really, really slowly cooking them, allowing them to caramelize. And what was 10 pounds becomes like a pint of this delicious sweet onion puree. And you pass in puree and all that kind of stuff, and then make risotto out of it. It's a recipe that I used to do years ago at a restaurant called San Domenico in New York City, and I worked there for 5 years or so. And it's a traditional dish from San Domenico, and make this beautiful risotto with these caramelized onions, and finish it with Parmesan cheese and a little bit of butter, and it's creamy and gorgeous and just so deeply flavored. But then I top it with short ribs of beef that are braised in a really deep. Instead of red wine, I use red wine and red wine vinegar.
Mm-hmm.
So that vinegar really cuts the fat content of that short ribs, and it just creates almost a raisinated flavor profile. If you think of that deep sweet, acidic deliciousness, right?
Yeah.
Sitting on top of risotto with some pickled Fresno chilies and stuff. That's what I think I would cook right now because I'm in the mood for it. And again, it's worth the time. Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, so final question. This is probably the most important question.
That was probably a longer than you geared up.
No, that's exactly what I expected and what I wanted, man. That's awesome. I hate the short answers. It's like, I would make a good coffee. Like, all right, well, thanks, Scott. That helped nothing. But all right. That's right. So, all right, biggest question probably of your entire career. Would you rather, this is how you know it's going to be a good one.
Oh boy.
Would you rather let Bobby Flay beat you on national television or eat a bowl of red onions?
I'd prefer neither if I had to put myself in that situation. But I think being beat by Bobby is almost a rite of passage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know anybody who's not been beaten by Bobby. Very few people have competed, cooking food competition more than Bobby. So, yeah, I mean, I think I would be honored to be beat by Bobby. I don't want a bowl of onions. No thanks. No, I'm good.
Yeah, I really love understanding people's like idiosyncrasies of like things that they dislike. So, for instance, Andrew Zimmern's like absolute vomituous reaction to walnuts cracks me up.
That's wild.
I'm like, the man can eat like cockroaches and be fine, but a walnut, he loses it. So I did laugh when you mentioned how much you distaste red onions. So had to ask.
Just to be clear about the onions, if I may, if I could just take 2
Yeah.
time. I'm even going to time myself. So all I ask for with the onions is not to be raw. They just need to be treated. Like, let them soak in water or salt in water or vinegar in water or vinegar, salt in water, whatever the case may be. Just they need to be treated. That's all I say. It's not, we're talking about haute cuisine, right? If I went to a deli and I ordered a salad, I would expect a raw onion sitting in my salad. I don't expect a raw onion when we're talking about something like fine dining, like haute cuisine.
Right.
Yeah.
It's such an intense flavor too, right?
I think that was a minute, by the way. So I didn't go on that long of a tangent.
That's right. That was good. I get it. It's so intense of a flavor. It really does overpower just about anything unless you treat it right.
That's right.
Well, thanks for all the insights. Thanks for the rawness, no pun intended. And thanks in advance for a book that I cannot wait to get my hands on, and hopefully the listeners do too.
Appreciate that.
Absolutely gracious, and can't wait to talk again.
I look forward to it, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
If you love what we've served up, please follow us at Vigor Branding on Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Medium. Forktales is produced by the team at Vigor. Audio and video post-productions provided by Zencaster. Music performed by Jet Trash and licensed through musicbed.com. Joseph handles his own hair, makeup, and stunts. Copyright 2003 to 2021, Vigor Graphic Design LLC, all rights reserved.